Hey y'all, I'm Karen Mayer Cunningham, the special education boss. If you've ever felt confused, overwhelmed, or just plain frustrated at the 504 IEP table, you are in the right place. Every week, I'm breaking down the rules, the rights, and the realities of special education so you can walk into meetings informed, empowered, and ready to make real change. And whether you're a parent, a teacher, an advocate, a school-based member, or somebody who's just trying to do right by a student, this podcast gives you straight talk, real answers, and tools that you can use immediately. I'm not here to play politics. I'm not here to play sides. I'm here to train people who sit at the table and teach you how to follow the law, ask the right questions, and protect the rights of students. So go ahead and hit subscribe, share this with a friend, and you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change. We're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody. Hello. How are you, fine people? Welcome. So if you haven't met, I'm Karen Mayer Cunningham, special education boss. Tonight, we're going to train on the 5 pillars of an amazing IEP. And so we want to make sure that we're getting content out to you guys from across platforms for all the reasons, because we don't want to ever lose contact with you guys. And so I think when people think about writing an IEP document, they get a little bit overwhelmed and what goes here and what's the laws. And so I've shrunk it down to 5 pillars. Obviously, there's different components that go into IEP, but I want you to know really what is primacy when we're looking for developing an IEP. And so if you don't know me, you can reach us at advocate@specialeducationacademy.com. We train school districts, we train professionals, we train parents, we train people to become advocates as a living. And so anything that we can do to help you in that space, please let us know. So my moderators are going to put our website, which is specialeducationboss.com or specialeducationacademy.com. They all go in the same place. Thank you for the hearts. And then anything that we can do to serve you. We have a team of advocates that represent families nationwide in every state. So whether you need somebody to look at your records review, maybe you need somebody to give you recommendations on next steps, maybe recommendations on a state complaint, help you file a federal complaint, representation in any way, we do that. If you don't know, at Special Education Academy, we have one focus, and our one goal is successful student outcomes. And really, when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody. And most times we do get it right. But if you don't know these steps, there's going to be some misinformation. And I think a lot of times for parents, it's very hard in this process because they come in from a medical place or a parenting position and not enough information about the requirements that go inside of an IEP. Now, I'm not going to list every legal requirement in IEP here. I'm not going to do that because you would log off. But let's talk about things that we really need to know as parents, as support parents, surrogate parents, foster parents, however we're serving that child. So really, the first question is, when did you know something was different? Because all of us usually know something is different, but we go and tell a friend or we go and tell a relative, and they're like, that's fine. My kid had that in 1904 and he's doing great. So really, when did you know something was different, right? Something about your child in the functional area, physical area, his ability to communicate, emotions, his ability to ambulate, to access information and retain it. And so we need to respond to that difference. Because we know in a medical intervention, the quicker we respond, the better. It's the exact same way in an educational intervention. So the quicker we respond, the better. And how do we do that? So how we do that is you reach out to your school district, county, or state, and you say, hi, this is Karen Mayer Cunningham. I have a child I don't believe his levels are in the average range. And it's a very simple request that you do, that you send to the school district. It doesn't have to be some long letter from the United Nations or some law book. It simply says, hi, this is Karen Mayer Cunningham. This is my formal request for my student to have testing for special education and related services. Areas of suspected disability are learning, attention, language, emotions, functional, any of those pieces are a need that we cover under IDEA. So IDEA is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and it serves children that are in need of special education and related services between the ages of 3 and 22. So first, we want to get our child tested. And what's really important is that we get our child tested in all areas. Often when myself or one of our advocate partners get a client or a family that's just had their child tested, what we see is really light testing. We call it pitiful. So we want your testing to be 3 Ps. We want it to be Pristine, Prescriptive, and Puffy. And so we need to look at 8 areas. And we have a training on the 8 areas of testing, and we can link that below in one of our other YouTube videos, but I'm just going to run through them quickly. So number 1, you want to ask for a speech and language evaluation in for your child, speech and language. So there's 9 areas that can be served in an educational setting, but it's important and paramount that you say we want a speech and language evaluation to include pragmatics. That's that social communication. And a lot of times evaluators will say, "Oh, Miss Cunningham, we're not going to do that because there's not a suspicion of autism." We do it to see if there's a need. So there's no criteria in the law that says we don't do something because we don't think there's a certain eligibility. Remember that the federal code, IDEA 300.111, and 34 CFR Federal Code Volume 204 simply says this, that we are charged, and when I say we, a local education agency, your school district, county, or city, is charged with ILE, identifying, locating, and evaluating children with suspected disabilities who may be in need of special education and related services. That's all it says. It doesn't say, oh, you got to prove it. You got to bring in a doctor's letter. You have to, it doesn't say any of that. So don't get caught in those shenanigans. That's the nice way of saying it, right? So your district is charged with testing your student. And we won't know till the end of educational testing if there is a need. And so remember that the testing stands, the F in FIE stands for full. So you're looking for a full individualized evaluation. So we want speech and language to include pragmatic. Number 2, I'm going to request a medical physical. So important that we do a medical physical. What's going on with my kiddo medically? Is he taking medications? Does he have emotional needs? Does he have physical needs? Does the pediatrician already know that in some areas he's not in the normed and average range based on milestones? So we want to share that with the school district, right? Next, you're looking for sociological, such an important piece. We learned this during the pandemic, right? Sociological would be those things that are happening in the child's life that don't exist in the school. So maybe parents are getting divorced. Maybe dad works at home now and the child feels like dad doesn't go to work. Maybe we've moved in a loved one. With the economy, sometimes parents and families have moved back together. Maybe the child's last sibling has moved away. Maybe the child's lost a pet. And so things that may not seem paramount to you would be paramount to that child, and it's impacting them. So sociological. And so you give that to the parents, the other parents, and the other parents. However many parents there are, you give that form out for them to complete. So we got speech and language to include pragmatic. We have medical, physical, sociological. Number 4, we're asking for a cognitive profile in all 7 G's. What does the G stand for? They stand for gangster. No, they do not stand for gangster. They stand for brain skills. And that really is how you process, absorb, manipulate, store, retrieve, and take in information. It's how you're cooked. So your cognitive profile is such great information. It's the way that you came to this earth, right? I'm cooked very high. I process things very high. I talk very fast, right? And so I have high processing speed. It doesn't mean I'm smarter than you. I just am zoom. I'm a skillet, right? And some kids have low processing speed. That just means it takes them longer to process the same information that you're providing. It's not a disability. They just process slower. So you need to know that as an educator when we're serving these students. So number 1, we're going to make sure that it's in all 7 G's and make sure that you say that when you capture the request. So number 5, we're going to ask for achievement. Achievement is really what I can get out of my brain, down my arm, onto a piece of paper. Remember that 2 things happen in a classroom: instruction and production. Instruction and production. So the teacher's teaching, they're giving information, they're sharing content, and then they want what? They want Billy to get to work. So achievement is, can I take all that teacher was providing and then give an appropriate and response information to what I've been taught? So in achievement, you're always going to ask for, they're going to standard do the 3 areas: reading, written expression, and math. But we're going to request 2 more. The 2 others are OE and LC, oral expression and listening comprehension. So we want those 5: reading, written expression, math, oral expression, and listening comprehension in the areas of achievement. Okay. Number 6, we're going to ask for adaptive behavior. And those are just those skills that say, how close am I to other individuals my age? How close are my adaptive skills to other 59-year-olds? I'm sure I'm much further ahead than the other 59-year-olds or not. And so that could be in language, communication, leisure. And so then that might have a need for adapting the product that we're giving them, adapting curriculum, adapting physical education, adapting the expectation based on your adaptive behavior scores. So we want those done formally. We want it done by 2 teachers. And we want it done by every parent in the child's life. Okay. That was number 6, right? Was that number 6? Sure, it was number 6. Okay, number 7 is psychological evaluation. Now, oh my gosh, Karen, my child doesn't have any behavior needs. Nobody said anything about behavior needs. We all have behaviors. One of my behaviors is I'm very demonstrative when I talk. I just did a training last week in Las Vegas. And before we started, the leader of the training asked all the speakers to use the entire stage. You don't have to ask me. I use the entire stage. I got in all of my steps. I'm very demonstrative. So you want to make sure that those are behaviors that I have, right? So we all have behaviors. So a psychological evaluation, first of all, it tells us how we emotionally respond to our world, right? It talks about if there's a need for counseling as a related service, if there's a need for a functional behavior assessment, an FBA, which then might give way to a behavior intervention plan. Any of those things that a child might need emotionally or behaviorally, we're looking for things that are not in the normed and average range. Also, the psychological evaluation will determine if there's eligibility consideration for 3 areas. ADHD, which can present in 3 ways, right? Inattentive, hyperactive, or combined. Autism or emotional disability. And so please don't discredit that. Please, if you're a school-based member, don't talk the parents out of it. It's paramount. And then number 8, related services. So again, the federal law 300.111 under IDEA says that the LEA, the local education agency, is charged with identifying, locating, and evaluating children with suspected disabilities who may be in need of special education and related services. And so related services could be speech and language therapy services, occupational services, in-home parent training, music therapy, recreational therapy, depending where you are in the United States, adaptive physical education. And so make sure that you've asked for those, because if you don't ask for them, there's a high probability that they won't test for them. And so when that testing comes back, which is a great amount of time later, then we're back at the end of the line waiting for testing. And so when you ask for this testing, depending on where you are in the United States, it starts a timeline. So it's either 30 days, 45 days, or 60 days. And those are calendar days. That is up to or more than 25% of the year. So make sure that you get that done. When the testing comes back, we then have an additional 30 days to come back to the table to look at those numbers, those quantifiable measurements, and decide as a committee if, in fact, the student needs support. So one of 3 outcomes are going to occur at the end of testing. One of 3 outcomes. Number 1, your child does not have a disability that needs extra support at home. I didn't say he didn't have a disability. I just said that he doesn't need extra support at home. I'm sorry, at school. Did I say at home? At school. And so that means even though your child might have a disability, that the general ed teacher and or the general ed staff is more than equipped to manage that disability. Number 2 outcome, your child does have a disability that rises to the level of needing supports in a 504 plan. That is from the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. We're not going to really talk about that much today because more than 95% of the kiddos that are evaluated are going to be in need of special education and related services when we do the testing comprehensively and exhaustively. And so number 3, your child does have a disability that needs additional support at school called an IEP. An IEP is an individualized education program. It is a program to serve a child with a disability to mitigate his disability, right? We are charged with, by law, Andrew F., the Supreme Court decision from March 22nd, 2017. It says that the LEA is charged with writing an IEP to enable the student to make progress in light of their unique circumstances. And so that's our job. We have to write an IEP to enable them to make progress. And so that's what we're going to do in this IEP. So let's talk about these 5 pillars that I believe it's paramount that exist in your IEP if you're going to have great outcomes for a kiddo. Number 1 is present levels of academic achievement and functional performance. Some places in the United States call them a PLAF. Some call them a PLOP. Some call them a PLAP. But either way, it is your IP address. So it should be a very descriptive narrative, I would say 3 pages long, of how the student presents at school, right? How does their disability and or their comorbidities impact them in an educational setting? And so that's going to be everything from bell to bell, like when they get there till they leave, or even further from bus to bus. And so to understand what's going on, the first thing that I would do is just get out a piece of paper and with the school and say, let's walk through his instructional day. Most parents are not aware of the student's instructional day. They're also not aware of the student to staff ratio. And so we just start out the meeting with that. Cindy, would you mind if we just pause this for a second and we can talk about Mikey's instructional day? And I literally would start out, okay, 7:30, he gets to school, we have breakfast. How's breakfast going? It's going terrible because that's the time that he has his medicine for ADHD and he's not hungry. So he is at breakfast with his friends, but he's all up in their business. So then we're going to talk to the OT and say, hey, could you make him a busy box? That way he has something to do while the others have something to do called eating their breakfast. So he can still be with his peers, but he's not in their business. So we need to look at the need so we can look at ways of mitigating it. Remember, the reason for special education is just one reason, just one reason. We're trying to teach a child strategies to self-manage their disability. Strategies. We're not trying to make it go away, but just strategies to self-manage their disability. And so in the present levels, everything that would go in there, this is, you ever cleaned out your refrigerator and put everything into, a casserole. And so everything goes in. The evaluations, their present levels. What does that mean? What's going on in math? What's going on when he transitions between activities? What's going on when he goes to PE and there's 400 kids running around like lunatics in junior high, right? What's going on at recess? Does he play with other kids or does he play by himself? What about lunch? What's happening when we tell him to stop an activity that he doesn't want to stop? And so often when we get present levels, it's here's his grade, here's how he did on the state test. About the state test. And just as anecdotal information, it doesn't tell me who that child is, how he shows up. He's not struggling at everything and everywhere every day. And I think a lot of schools have been taught to list their strengths and weaknesses. Ugh. So I'm not a fan of that. Let's really describe this child. Let's talk about his eligibilities. Let's talk about his medical diagnosis. Let's talk about what's going on in his life so that maybe we can have some more compassion and write a product, an IEP that enables him to make progress. So that is the present levels. Number 2, you're going to have annual IEP goals. And so going back to the present levels, let me just remind you of the most important part, in my opinion, for the present levels. And that is under 300.324 in the federal code. And that is parent concerns for enhancing the education of their child. And so often I'm told at meetings, we'll put that in deliberations. You won't. You won't. It's a requirement under 300.324. There's actually 4 things that go into developing, reviewing, and implementing an IEP. And one of those 4 things is parent concerns for implementing for enhancing the education of your child. And if you're a school-based member and you don't agree with the parent, it's not your business to agree with them. It's their purview. And every case law will say that the parent is the expert. So please don't dismiss them. Okay. Number 2 pillar is annual goals. Annual goals. So those are for every area identified need. So let's say that the student is identified with autism and they have a speech impairment. And I say, we need to have a reading goal. Oh, we can't have that because he doesn't have a reading eligibility. I don't know who told you that. Let's go back to what Andrew F. says, that we write an IEP to enable him to make progress with goals that are appropriately ambitious in light of his circumstances. It didn't say jack about his eligibility. So let's stop saying that to parents, that you can't have a goal if it's not an eligibility, because that is wrong. And that's been upheld by the Supreme Court decision and was remanded back to Douglas County in Colorado. So the Andrew F. test is the standard that we have to apply and measure. So if there's a need, a critical area of need, absolutely we can write an IEP goal around it. And so that might be in language, it might be in articulation, it might be in your functional ability to get dressed after restrooming, it might be in your ability to ambulate, it might be in your ability to have good social skills, obviously the 5 academic areas. But all of those things are comprehensive during their instructional day. It might be on eating. Anything that happens in the student's world during an instructional day, if there's an identified deficit, we could, as a committee, agree to write an IEP goal around it. Okay. Pillar number 3. I hope you're writing this down. Needed accommodations. Notice I said needed, not just every accommodation I can think of just in case. So there's no such thing as just in case under the law. So in accommodations, you should know this, whether it's a 504 or an IEP, is a civil right. It's a civil right. So when a teacher does not deliver an accommodation, it's a violation of their civil rights. So almost all students, certainly there are students that are greatly impacted by their comorbidities and meet the eligibility of multiple disabilities. But for most kiddos, 10 accommodations or less is plenty. I don't want teachers walking around all day with a clipboard. I want to give them the ability to teach But we know without the accommodations, the student will not make expected progress on their IEP goals. So we want to certainly make sure that we've identified those needed accommodations and that they're clear. So clear. They're not up for interpretation. Let's not say stuff at teacher discretion. That's discriminatory. Discretion is you're discriminating based on your purview. Let's not use words like up to 25%. That's a lot of choices. As needed. As needed is not a thing. You want to make it crystal clear and pristine. Okay. A needed accommodations. Okay. Pillar number 4, where to implement the student's program. We call that LRE, least restrictive environment. So I don't like the words LRE, but nobody asked me in December 2nd, 1975. But least restrictive environment. Let me tell you what least restrictive environment is not. It is not a location and it is not general ed. I know you're shocked, aren't you? So you've always been told as teachers that it's general ed. We got to get them back to general ed. We got to back. So least restrictive environment says that we are charged with educating students with disabilities to the maximum extent possible with their non-disabled peers. And sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes I've had children that I have served over the last almost 3 decades that have never been in general ed. I've had kiddos that have been homebound their entire educational career because of the acuity of their disability. And it's not a location that we get them back to general ed. It's what is appropriate for this child in their content areas. And we do it across content areas. It's not a one and done. They might love math and do great in general ed, and they might need resource for reading. So we talk about their needs across settings. Okay. And then pillar number 5 is required special education support time. I call it, it's the SOS page, the Save Our Student, just kidding, schedule of services page. And there we're charged with listing at minimum. Some states do general ed and special ed time, but at minimum, we're charged with listing where do we think it's best and most appropriate to have the IEP implemented. Is it better implemented by general ed? Is it better implemented by special ed? Is it joint? I love the opportunity to say the word joint in public. And who's going to give that grade? We really want to make sure that special education services page is populated. Let me clarify some misnomers in the special education page. It can be delivered solely by a para. It can't, love. It cannot. So we're very clear that special education services are delivered solely by a special educator or the paraprofessional staff after direct instruction and supervision. So a lot of times we see kiddos in the United States that have a para. We love paras. And the student has never seen a special educator. So we need to make sure that is happening. Karen, we're running low on teachers. You know what? We've been running low on special education teachers for 49 years. That does not change the obligation to deliver that to the student with special education and related services. And then finally, we want to partner with the school for an appropriate implementation of FAPE. What is FAPE? That really is a good question. FAPE is a free, appropriate public education that's delivered to the student with a disability to enable him to make gains in the general ed curriculum, not setting, in the general ed curriculum. So that's a lot of information to go over. And then at the end, we always want to remember they're going to reassess our child every 3 years. And so we want to make sure that we're doing that. And then you kind of just go back to the front of the line, right? How do we reassess them? Do you have to reassess in all areas? Absolutely not. But we certainly want to reassess in areas that are needed. And so we're charged with doing that at the latest every 3 years. But you could do it more often if a child is already identified as a child with a disability. And let's say that you've gotten representation now and you have an advocate and you realize that he has autism and he has sensory needs and nobody's ever worked on getting him OT in sensory or OT in fine motor, or that music therapy is an option for him or other related services. So I hope that information is helpful. I hope that is equipping for you guys. So we certainly want to open it up for questions. So Cindy, are you the question queen tonight?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay. Jen said she requested a letter by email to the school principal in April of 2023. She didn't get an evaluation for her child until September of 23. Why would that be?
So that would be you didn't get the evaluation or they didn't start it. If you requested it in April of 2023 and it was completed in September of 2023, that's probably right. So once you sign notice and consent, then they're going to use that 45, usually it's 45 or 60 school days. 45 school days is 9 weeks. So April, and then we get back to the table in September could be right. Unless you're saying they didn't start the testing until September. And maybe you can give us some more information on that.
Oh, actually, she just did. Jen said they apologized for missing her email.
Oh, yeah. And so that's really important that once you sent the email, it sets a 15-day timeline. So if they haven't responded, I would say, this is my second email. We don't wait on somebody else to help our child. You have to be on top of it and keep sending those emails. The squeaky wheel gets the wheel grease. And so we like the wheel grease. Yeah.
Okay. That was our question.
Okay. I think that there's other questions. I'll read it for you.
Here, yep.
Okay.
Just came. Yes.
Okay.
Profoundly deaf 7-year-old with cochlear implants. We would like to sing. We would like to sign support, but district says no because he had some limited oral expression. How can we request this so he can be successful?
Yeah, so having verbal communication and having the eligibility of DHH, deaf and hard of hearing, are not exempt of each other. So again, I would send a letter saying this is my formal request for my student to have special education and related testing done. And then for a lot of people, if it's something you can do, representation really changes the game. And obviously, I'm not an attorney, and if I was, I wouldn't be your attorney. But we all have the right to go into court without representation, correct? You could go into court against me and have an attorney, and I go in without an attorney. The problem or the truth of that is, while it's legal, it's your right. The judge has no obligation to lean over and go, hey, Lisa, you're missing this and this, even though he knows it. And unfortunately, we are dealing with a setting that is low funded at the federal and state level often. Maybe it's not the primary focus of some districts. And when you can get somebody to represent you that does this in this space, it really does change outcomes for the kids that we serve.
What is appropriate documentation to put in an OCR complaint for not having a certified special education teacher in the classroom? I'm trying to figure out the best way, to document.
So depending on so you've got to really be careful with the Office of Civil Rights. They have a very short list of what they oversee. So at specialeducationacademy.com, we have a training on state complaints, and then we have a separate training on OCR complaints. Because for years I got it wrong and they were just dismissed by the federal government. They're unbelievably effective if you file them correctly. So remember, OCR covers 504, IDEA, Title II, ADA, and some components of IDEA, but it's a little bit tricky in how you do it. But certainly if you haven't had a certified teacher in your classroom, we can always file a state complaint under 300.156 for denying the student a certified educator to implement the IEP with fidelity. But again, I don't know your case, so I'd have to know exactly the components to help give you recommendations or next steps for which direction I would file.
Fantastic. We learned in December that our kiddo was moved from an academic self-contained classroom to an ABA self-contained classroom. He was doing fantastic in the academic class setting, but he is going backwards now in the current class. Suggestions.
So if we moved your child's setting, we have to have an IEP meeting. Based upon what you're telling me, that's you didn't have parent input, so they didn't have a convened IEP. You have to make decisions as a committee. That committee at minimum has to exist of 5 stakeholders. Number one stakeholder, of course, and always will be the parent, the expert for the student. The LEA representative, which is almost always a principal or an assistant principal. Some states, there is certifications for a counselor could do that. Number 3, a general ed teacher. Number 4, a special educator. And number 5, someone that does evaluations, can answer questions about assessments. So if you didn't have a meeting to change placement, then that is an illegal move.
There was an update on that one. It said, oops, I'm sorry, I sent it too fast. His teacher resigned over winter break, and we want him to be returned to the last class. Right now, they're talking about outside placement. Any advice?
So sometimes outside placement is a blessing. I had 2 kiddos Friday. I do about 500 IEP meetings a year. And 2 of my kiddos Friday are in out of district placements because that's based on their acuity of their need. We have to remember that public school is limited, right? It's not a hospital. It's not a counseling center. It doesn't have time for kids to go outside and work in a garden or maybe some animals, or just a lot more time to be able to unwind or regulate. That's just not available in a public school setting because we're bound by state standard. Anytime there's a conversation about any setting, I'm amenable to have that conversation, but you certainly would have to have, and when I say you, the district is charged with having the data to support that recommendation. Without the data, we don't move.
Absolutely. So Mark asked, my daughter will be outplaced next year. Would you still recommend an IEP meeting in her triennial?
When you say, what is outplaced? What does that mean?
That's a great question. Maybe we'll get some clarification. But what I'm sensing is that they are going to be either going to a middle school or another placement or a school that is not within the district.
But if he'll tell us what that is.
Okay.
So I can give you information about a bunch of settings.
Okay.
There's Rhonda. Rhonda said, hello. I think that's exactly how she said it. Hello.
Yes.
You guys have got to get some pictures on your little things. Cindy has a picture. Does Elena have a picture, or she's just a letter E? I think she's just a letter E. Elena, come on now. E stands for expected. She's expecting you to get it together.
It does. Okay, here's another one. How do you think of special education student resource for one class doing dual enrollment in high school?
So I'm not a fan of dual enrollment for kids with disabilities. I know nobody likes that answer, but I'm not. I don't know that I've ever met an adult that was so glad that they did dual enrollment. I know you're not going to want to hear that. I want kids to enjoy school. If you have an identified disability and you need resource from some content area, I'd be hard pressed that dual enrollment, even if you could do it, was the best setting for the child. So for my clients that I serve, I don't recommend dual enrollment because there's no obligation to implement the IEP in that class. That's a college class.
Okay, so we do have clarification from Mark. Mark is said, yes, out of district. Would you like me to read the original?
No. Hello, Mark Jimenez. So again, that doesn't give me any information. Out of district. So the student's unsuccessful in school. If they're unsuccessful now, why aren't they going now? Mark, that just gives me like 15 more million questions. But what quantifies a student needing to go out of district? If we're in January and we have 5 more months of school, why wouldn't that out of district be now?
I like that. Do you think I should, and this is from Jen, do you think I should pursue any legal action due to the late evaluation? I did put my consent in an email for an evaluation in April, as my doctor advised me to do.
I wouldn't give you that recommendation right now, but if you're looking for representation, I could certainly talk to you about that. Again, we're looking at 2 things. What's the end game? Is the end game to find them non-compliant? Because a lot of times you can find them non-compliant in the state and they just tell them to not do it again. So there's a question from Casey Valenzuela. Can you scroll back up and see that?
I can.
Yeah.
I'm in California. My daughter's case manager is a co-teacher of math. When I'm communicating with her about other classes, she states that she is only allowed and she can only help out with math.
She can only help out with math and math, or if she's her case manager, she should be able to help out with the implementation of the IEP. Although she might not be the one that does that, it is her job to oversee the delivery of the IEP in the form that it was codified and with fidelity. So I would ask for clarification in writing. Can you clarify that you said you can't help me?
There we go.
Bonnie said the most important thing. She said, my hair looks fantastic, which really makes a difference in IEP meetings. Big hair makes you have big outcomes for kids. Elena, Cindy?
Clearly.
Yeah. And we're going to ask you guys, if you haven't subscribed, to go ahead and subscribe to our channel. We'll always be here. Obviously, there is some on the FB that's gone away some days. The IG's gone away some days. The TT has gone away some days. But we're really looking to grow this channel and keeping lives available for you guys where you can ask questions and we get you information. So please subscribe and share it with your friends that you like and the ones you don't like. Cindy?
We share with everybody. We learned that in kindergarten.
Yes. So Lindsay asked, where do we put in the IEP assistive technologies? That's a good question, Lindsay. Assistive technology is required to be addressed annually in the IEP meeting. So some software has a section for assistive technology. We for sure would put it at the accommodations have an assistive technology section. And then we also want to put in assistive technology. What is it we're using? Sometimes we say visuals. And what that means is Elena is using flashcards. And sometimes it means we're using visuals to communicate. So really, as much specificity as possible is going to be great.
Okay. Let's see. The special education teacher in my kid's self-contained classroom resigned over the winter break. How long is it okay for a substitute without certification to teach the class?
None. There's no, can I be your doctor or not be a doctor for a couple of days? Is that okay? So it's just not okay. So I understand that we have people that leave, people that have medical concerns, people have to take care of something in their life. I certainly honor and understand that. But we agreed to a codified IEP that would be implemented with fidelity. So I would just capture the days that a certified teacher did not deliver the IEP. And then at the end of the spring, I would ask for those days in compensatory time. It's not personal. This is the business. It's the business of educating kids with disabilities.
Let's see. My son's school was never taught. It just went up. He's in 10th grade. I've just learned about AT from you, so thank you very much.
Yeah, and let me just give you another piece, Lindsay. So if you want to look up the Assistive Technology Act of 1998, the Assistive Technology Act of 1998 is a federal act. It's a requirement. It certainly impacts kids in school, and then it impacts adults with disabilities through a lifetime. It's a great resource for you.
Excellent. What things change for kids going into middle school and high school, or what you call
junior high, middle school, interim school? What changes is they go from 2 teachers who might be very much their cheerleaders to 7 different teachers. So what we find as advocates, as parents have a tendency to step back as their kids get older. Don't do that. You need to step forward, because we often find that school districts give left services, tell parents they need left services because they're older now. They need to advocate for themselves. You have to stay on top of your child's IEP needs till the day they graduate. You want to make sure that all 7 of the educators have a copy of their IEP, their accommodations, their IEP goals, their schedule of services page. You also want to make sure that when you get into that IEP meeting that you walk through the schedule and who's the history teacher, who's the math teacher, who's the science teacher. And then if your child has ICS, in-class support in those classes, I'm going to say, who is the second adult? And that's what I say. Who is the second adult? Oh my gosh, my cubes are out. I can barely function. Because it's often told to parents in IEP meetings that there's a special education staff. What are you talking about? So there's no such thing as special education staff. You have an identification. You're either a long-term sub, a certified teacher, an employee. But certified special education staff could be anybody that helps with special education children. That could be the cafeteria lady. And I love the cafeteria lady. That could be the registrar. That could be Mr. Bob, the SRO. But are you a certified special educator? And I ask tough questions because I need to know the answer. Elena, you're the general ed reading teacher in 4th grade, correct? Who is the second adult in the class? Billy Bob. Okay. Is that his last name? Bob? Yes. And is Billy Bob a certified special educator in the state of Florida? So I just want you to know that Billy loves children. And oh my gosh, we're so lucky to have. Yes, ma'am. Is Billy Bob a certified special educator in Florida? Here's the good news. It's either yes or it's no. And depending on that answer, I'm going to ask for support for my child. If you don't ask, you don't really think that the school is going to call you and go, listen, we're not implementing the IEP. Don't tell anybody. That's not our experience.
Jen was also told that they do not get accommodations in middle school.
Yeah, that's when you bust out, Jen, your pool noodle and bonk them in the head. Or as one of my friends said, you could drop marbles in their gas tank. We would never do that. We just thought that was funny. Yeah, they get accommodations if they need them for a lifetime. It's part of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 for individuals with disabilities.
And it leads very nicely into this one. Do you have any advocates that help students with disabilities navigate challenges of the college environment?
Yeah, so in college, you're then covered still under the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. And so we work with the student, the adult student, and or their parent, depending on their level of support, to make sure that they work with the disability office to get needed accommodations.
So my heart goes out to the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
That's their name. I am a new special education teacher. How is it possible to teach 6 classes a day, plan activities, manage 32 students as a teacher of record, some of which I don't ever see, IEPs, and make sure I don't make any mistakes?
Dear Wizard of Oz, we're not looking for no mistakes. We're just looking for progress. We're never looking for perfection. The concern for advocates is when schools, it's never teachers, it's never paras, it's never special educators. It's leadership that literally just look at our parents and lie to them. We don't have dyslexia in Florida. We don't have resource in Virginia. We don't have help for your child, which they absolutely do. So God bless teachers. We love you. Thank you for what you're doing. You're doing a great job, and just do your best. It's not about making mistakes. It's about implementing the IEP with fidelity as much as you understood it. And so when we're making sure that kids are making progress in light of their circumstances, then we're all happy.
How much is quote unquote normal communication throughout the school year? Last year, the teacher sent home a weekly newsletter, weekly reports, and lots of photos in Dojo. This year, he has a new teacher, and I get nothing.
I was that parent. I was like, when are they graduating? What year are they graduating? I want to let teachers teach. You don't get to come to my job and ask me for a newsletter every day. Oh my gosh, if my clients asked me for a newsletter every week, they would be sad. I think that whenever the teacher has time to put out information, that's great. We are charged with providing correspondence to parents on a child's grades every 9 or 6 weeks or trimester, depending on how your state does it. And then with that, I would expect a progress report if there's an IEP. What we do at the beginning is we certainly avail ourselves to teachers and we say, listen, thank you so much for serving my child, any of my kids. Here's my number. The kids are scared of me. They're not scared of their father. Here's what's your favorite chocolate that you want. How can I help you support my child? And every teacher is different. Hopefully they're not communicating with you because they are busy educating.
No, here's a great lead in. Thank you for your help. Am I able to speak to the the teachers ahead of the school year or after the school year? I was thinking about the Zach pack.
Yeah, Zach Pack, you can connect with your teachers of record at any time. So I don't ask to find out my teachers in May for what they are in August because that could change. But certainly when school starts, I'm going to need a list of his educators so I could send them a welcome letter and his information.
The school board wants me to fill a notarized document that was made by the lawyer to fulfill my FERPA request to review my child's files. My county requests are very verbal or written. Is that normal?
So we don't notarize anything for the school district. They can, I'm just kidding. No, we don't notarize. We don't go pay to notarize a document. I'll come into your office, show you my ID, and give you a written letter requesting my records. And those are a requirement under the law is that I'm allowed to see, view, and receive copies of my students' records. They're not the school records. They're my records. So I would say, let's not do that, Buttercup. Let's just follow the law. That's if you say Buttercup, it makes everything so much better. So I think, go ahead.
A notary costs quite a pretty penny.
Yeah, you're not running me around town unless it's going to look at sweatshirt. Oh, look, here's Julie from North Carolina. Julie, I'm waiting for my sweatshirt. I know it's cold in North Carolina now.
Can you explain ESSA communication requirements between teachers and parents?
No. We are allowed to communicate with the teacher that teaches my child. We're not allowed to become their second skin. Is the school district saying that you can't communicate, Julie? Which wouldn't surprise me about your school district.
While we're waiting for that answer, the difference between general education, small groups, and special education classroom small groups, SDI minutes. Should the Gen Ed small group be supporting Gen Ed curriculum or given separate assignments?
So Gen Ed is Gen Ed. Special education is special education. That's specially designed instruction. We literally just finished a series on that. So you're certainly going to want to join Special Education Academy. We train every Monday night for an hour on the state law, the federal law, the letter of the law, and the spirit of the law. And then we put it in series so that you could know. But Gen Ed minutes don't require any tracking under IDEA or 504.
Who do I request my kids' records from? The office attendant or the principal?
Neither. You go to wherever admin is, wherever legal is, probably where they have the school board meetings, take your driver's license. And we have a document in Special Education Academy that's part of your free resources that's very robust. You fill it out, make 2 copies, sign your wet signature, and then provide that to somebody at admin. And that starts a 45-day timeline, a 45 calendar timeline. Julie said, yes, it is the school district. I'm so surprised, Julie. I'm just so shocked that they would do that in Washington, North Carolina.
Mark a minute. Last question, he said from him. From the last IEE for neuropsych that was discussed last June, as the year ended, the neuropsych doctor prescribed her with ADHD on top of ASD and ID, and she received ADHD meds. It was tough at home and school. Can we just stop the meds altogether?
Oh, why? I'm not a doctor, and I'm not your doctor. I would discuss that with my medical professional if that's appropriate for my child. Then medicating a minor child as an adult is a parent's decision. What might be right for me wouldn't be right for you. Hopefully you'll get that answer. And Mark Jimenez, we know that's not your last question, and we never want it to be.
Amen. During the middle of the year and the end of the year, they do the Bergantz testing on all the kids on IEPs. The kids receive 0 service time during these weeks. Their 30 to 40 minute counts as all their time during those weeks.
Yeah, I don't know why we would.
30 to 40 minute test counts as all of their.
And that's fine. That's fine. I don't know why we would give anybody a Bergantz test that wasn't in life skills, but I wouldn't. That's not a rock that I would die on. Middle of the year, end of year, I want you to say MOY and EOY, Cindy.
Would you like that?
I would like that. I want BOY, MOY.
You got it.
Yeah.
I will definitely
A boy, a moy, and an EOY.
EOY. EOY. Okay. My services through RTI and MTSS mean a child doesn't qualify or need an IEP.
No, you could be doing RTI, MTSS, SST, UPS, FedEx, OPI while a child has an IEP, but it's only supposed to be delivered for a moment. And then I do see a question. Elena, can you put in, we still have room in our Orlando, Florida in-person 2-day, which will be the 15th and 16th of February. It'll be live in person. It's in Orlando proper. So that is a training that we have coming up. It's the first 2-day I've done in person in 2 years. And then of course we always have our 2-day training that's on demand. And we have that in Spanish and English. So Jen said, where do I find the form to fill out the request of records? So that's one of the resources provided to you in the Special Education Academy membership. Do I ever come to California? I would love to come to California. I go everywhere else. I was just in Utah. I'm going to Wyoming. I'm going to Nashville this week. I just did a training last week in PA. I go anywhere that I can tolerate the temperature. I used to live in California in the San Fernando Valley for 2 years. Oh, the 2-day training is amazing. Thank you, Julie. TikTok is better. No advertisements there. Are you getting advertisements during the live, Mark? What are they advertising? Like this,
with trying to get out
like the video goes away and there's an ad? No. Yes. You know what? These people got to make that. They're not my ads. I don't know where they're from, but I'm still here. There's advertisements everywhere, aren't there?
I will be finding out how I can pay to remove those, because anything that would block your face, I don't want that.
Yeah, we don't want that.
No.
All right, so we're going to wrap this up. Hope you come. Oh, Sonoma County. Yeah, I feel like I need to go to wine country to do some training. Whining with wine. The IEP epidemic. Yeah, we'll go. All right. How do we join the academy? You simply just go to specialeducationacademy.com. We love you guys. If you need anything, let us know. Remember, we get it right for the child. We get it right for everybody. And we'll see you guys in the next training. Hit subscribe. Share this with a friend. And you know what? Meet me back here every single week. We're not just talking about change. We're making it. Because when you know better, you do better. And when we get it right for the child, we get it right for everybody.